The universe, divine creation or cosmic trap. Gnostic cosmology argues for the latter, painting a picture of a flawed world ruled by lesser gods where hidden knowledge is the key to liberation. The geocentric model, prevalent in ancient astronomy, placed the Earth at the center of the cosmos. Gnostic systems adopted this model, using it to depict the material world as a series of concentric spheres. This arrangement reinforces the idea of Earth as the focal point of imprisonment, with the planetary spheres acting as layers of confinement surrounding it. As the soul attempts to ascend through the spheres, it encounters increasingly restrictive levels of control. Each sphere represents a barrier, a hurdle that must be overcome to reach higher realms. This progressive restriction symbolizes the increasing difficulty of escaping the material world and returning to the Pleroma. The 7 planetary spheres, each ruled by an Archon, form a sevenfold prison, a complex system of interlocking barriers. This symbolism emphasizes the multifaceted nature of the Archon's control, with each Archon representing a different aspect of the material world that binds the soul. The concentric nature of the spheres also creates a feeling of being boxed in and that there is no escape. Each sphere can be seen as representing a different level of illusion, a different layer of deception that keeps the soul trapped in a state of ignorance. The Archons, as rulers of these spheres, are masters of illusion, manipulating our perceptions and distorting our understanding of reality. The spheres symbolize psychological constraints, such as ego, desire, and fear, that prevent us from achieving spiritual liberation. Each sphere represents a different internal obstacle that must be overcome. The spheres can also represent material attachments, the desires and dependencies that bind us to the physical world. Each sphere represents a different aspect of material existence that we must transcend to achieve spiritual freedom. And each sphere can also be seen as a level of control over the human senses and therefore the human experience. The moon is the prison of change. It represents the ever-changing nature of the material world, the cycles of birth, death, and reincarnation. And this traps the soul in a cycle of emotional fluctuations, instability, and impermanence. It represents the subconscious mind in dream states, keeping the soul from waking up. Mercury is the prison of the intellect, and it represents the intellect and communication, but in a distorted form. It traps the soul in intellectual pursuits that distract from spiritual gnosis. It represents the over-reliance on logic and the trapping of the soul within rational thought. Venus is the prison of desire, and it represents desire, passion, and sensual pleasure. And it traps the soul in a cycle of cravings and attachments, preventing it from achieving spiritual detachment. It also represents the pull of the senses. The sun is the prison of power. It represents power, authority, and dominion. It traps the soul in the pursuit of worldly power and recognition, reinforcing the illusion of ego. It represents the false light of the demiurge. Mars is the prison of conflict. It represents conflict, aggression, and violence, and it traps the soul in a cycle of conflict and suffering, perpetuating fear and anger. It represents the base animalistic urges. Jupiter is the prison of authority. It represents authority, judgment, and law. It traps the soul in a system of rigid rules and regulations, preventing it from exercising its spiritual freedom. It represents the inner critic and the internalization of outside authority. And Saturn is the prison of time. It represents time, limitation, and restriction. It traps the soul in a cycle of karmic debt and predetermined fate, reinforcing the illusion of powerlessness. It also represents the demiurge's ultimate control. Each archon that is assigned to a specific planetary sphere acts as its guardian and ruler. Their primary function is to maintain the integrity of their sphere and prevent unauthorized passage. The archon's control is not isolated but interconnected. They form a network of interlocking barriers, creating a comprehensive system of cosmic control. This interconnectedness ensures that the soul cannot bypass one archon to reach a higher realm. It must confront and overcome each one in turn. The archons enforce the demiurge's law and maintain the order of the material world. They act as agents of control, ensuring that the divine sparks remain trapped within the demiurge's creation. The archons provide a constant stream of distractions, such as material possessions, sensory pleasures, and worldly pursuits to keep souls occupied and prevent them from looking inward. These diversions create a false sense of fulfillment, masking the underlying emptiness and dissatisfaction of the material world. The archons offer fleeting pleasures and gratifications that create a temporary sense of happiness and satisfaction. These pleasures are ultimately illusory and unsatisfying, leaving souls craving more and perpetuating a cycle of dependency. The archons offer false promises of success and power and lasting happiness within the material world. These promises create a sense of hope and anticipation, and keep the souls invested in the illusion and prevent them from seeking true liberation. They also manipulate beliefs and ideologies, creating false narratives that reinforce the illusion of freedom. They promote ideologies that emphasize material success, worldly achievements, and external validation. Then this keeps souls trapped in a cycle of seeking external fulfillment. The Archons create systems of routine to keep the souls from having time to think about their situation. The illusion of freedom creates a sense of comfort and familiarity, making souls reluctant to challenge the status quo. They have become accustomed to their confinement, accepting it as the natural order of things. The Archons exploit the fear of the unknown, creating a sense of anxiety and uncertainty about the prospect of liberation. They portray the spiritual path as dangerous or unattainable, discouraging souls from venturing beyond the familiar confines of the material world. The illusion of freedom allows souls to deny their own suffering, to rationalize their dissatisfaction and attribute it to external circumstances. They convince themselves that they are content, even though they are experiencing inner turmoil and spiritual emptiness. The Archons create a system of rewards so that the souls feel like they are progressing and being rewarded within the system. The physical force of gravity, which pulls objects towards the earth, serves as a potent symbol for the forces that bind souls to the material realm. Just as gravity keeps us grounded, the weight of material existence keeps us tethered to the physical world, preventing us from ascending to higher spiritual realms. The material world, with its physical limitations and constraints, is seen as a heavy burden for the soul to bear. This burden is not merely physical, but also psychological and spiritual, weighing down the soul with desires, attachments, and illusions. The material world presents itself as solid and substantial, creating the illusion that it is the ultimate reality. And this illusion of solidity reinforces the weight of material existence, making it difficult for souls to recognize their true spiritual nature. Material desires, such as the craving for wealth, power, or sensual pleasure, acts as chains that bind the soul to the physical world. These desires create a sense of dependency, making it difficult for the souls to relinquish their attachments to the material world. Emotional attachments, such as desire for approval, recognition, or love from others, acts as anchors that keep souls grounded. These attachments create a sense of vulnerability and fear, preventing souls from taking risks and pursuing their spiritual path. Illusions, such as the belief in the permanence of material possessions or the importance of worldly achievements, act as veils that obscure the true nature of reality. These illusions create a false sense of security and fulfillment, preventing souls from seeking true liberation. The Archons use the senses to further add to this weight. The constant bombardment of sensory input keeps the souls focused on the physical. To transcend the weight of material existence, souls must cultivate detachment from worldly desires and attachments. This does not mean rejecting the material world entirely, but rather recognizing its impermanence and prioritizing spiritual values. Souls must develop their inner strength and resilience to resist the gravitational pull of the material world. This requires cultivating self-awareness, emotional control, and spiritual fortitude. The zodiac, a celestial band containing the 12 constellations, was considered a fundamental framework for understanding the cosmos in ancient times. In Gnostic cosmology, it acts as the outermost layer of the demiurge's creation, further enclosing the planetary spheres. Ancient astrology held that the positions of the stars and planets within the zodiac influenced human destiny. Gnostics adopted this concept, but interpreted it as a form of cosmic control, where the zodiacal forces further limited free will. The zodiac can be seen as a wheel of fate, a predetermined cycle that governs human lives. Souls are seen as being caught in the cycle, their destinies dictated by the positions of the celestial bodies at their birth. The belief in zodiacal influence implies a loss of autonomy, a sense that our lives are not entirely our own. This reinforces the Gnostic feeling of being trapped in a system beyond our control. The zodiac can be seen as a set of celestial chains, invisible forces that bind souls to predetermined patterns of behavior and experience. These chains limit our ability to transcend the material world and achieve spiritual liberation. The zodiac adds another layer of control to an already controlled system. This shows the vast amount of control that the demiurge and the archons have over humanity. Even though we might feel we are making our own choices, the Gnostics would argue that these choices are being influenced by the zodiac and therefore not truly free. The belief in zodiacal influence can create a sense of powerlessness, a feeling that we are at the mercy of cosmic forces. This can lead to feelings of resignation and despair, hindering our spiritual growth. It can also lead to the externalization of responsibility, which is a tendency to blame our circumstances on fate or destiny. This prevents us from taking responsibility for our own actions and choices. The Gnostic path emphasizes the need for inner freedom, the ability to transcend the limitations of external influences, and this requires cultivating inner strength and resilience and recognizing that our true nature is not bound by the stars. Gnostic cosmology presents a radical departure from conventional understandings of the universe's origins and humanity's place within it. It paints a picture of a flawed material realm, a cosmic prison constructed by a lesser ignorant deity, the Demiurge, and his Archons. This framework offers a unique lens through which to examine our existence and the pursuit of spiritual liberation.